Check
Blog
one.
Talk Radio.
Here we go with the main event of the evening. Ladies and gentlemen in attendance, boxing fans joining us around the world. It's time for the bout you've all been waiting for. Finally, it is showtime.
Here, man, we dedicate our life to this sport. We do thousands of sit-ups in camp. We run hundreds of miles, for the ones that take it serious. And we just dedicate ourselves fully to our craft, man. We watch tape. We have attitude. We're rooting, and we go into that fight just to land on the line.
What's up, boxing fans? This is the Rope-A-Dope Radio Podcast. I am your host, Chris Carlson. We are live on a Tuesday night. Hope everybody's feeling okay. I know I am up here in Minnesota, or should I say Minnesota. It hit like 60-something today, 62, 64. Now, don't get me wrong. It's supposed to rain tomorrow, and if it gets cold enough and keeps raining, it may be sleet. But, hey, I'm happy. You know what I'm saying? I'm happy. Anyway, we have a lot to discuss here on the Rope-A-Dope Radio Podcast. There were some fights last week, and Clarissa Shields highlighted the weekend, obviously, with a dominant, easy victory for her. Took care of business. Looked really, really good considering how long she's been out. The big thing for her is, she's just better than a lot of these women boxers. Let's just be honest. And we know, much like a chunk of years ago, we talked about it on the show last week, how the depth of UFC females has gotten better over the years for obvious reasons. Boxing, there's some divisions that are better than others, but it's going to be interesting with Clarissa. It does sound like she's going to kind of bounce back and forth of MMA and boxing, which I think is great. We'll see how those pay-per-view numbers did. But she is a pretty nice name, I'd say, in boxing. People know her, whether you love her or hate her or you watch her fights. A couple years back, she did a very good rating on Showtime. And she does get a lot of high-profile looks at times in the sports media. So we'll see, who's going to beat her is my point. She's gone, from super middleweight to middleweight to junior middleweight. Now there might be something at welterweight, obviously, if she can get there. There is something at welterweight. But now she's got to drop more weight. Maybe they can meet somewhere in between. I'm obviously talking about Katie Taylor and some other fighters around that weight class, by the way. But we'll see. We'll see. We will go over the Ring City USA Brandon Adams upset. Some of the undercard as well. I thought that was a pretty good night of boxing there, especially the main event. It was back and forth, and then we got some dramatics. Of course, this weekend, hardcore fight fans are very, very happy with a rematch, a long time coming rematch. Let's say that. If this was welterweights or middleweights or heavyweights, people would have been calling for this fight for the last few years, and they would have said, you know what, I don't even want to see it now. Obviously they'd watch it, but I'm speaking of course, Juan Francisco Estrada versus Roman Gonzalez, the rematch, dating all the way back to 2012. The flyweight wars are more of a hardcore fight fan thing. And, it really started basically with this fight right around this time frame. And both have, gotten key wins since. But yeah, even though this isn't at the 108 division anymore, this was a damn good fight back then, and Estrada just kept following Gonzalez up. we'll see what happens. Obviously, there is a good rematch on the undercard, the co-feature McCaskill against Breckus, the rematch. That was a good competitive fight. Showbacks has a card tomorrow night. David Benavidez returns. There's actually a fairly even fight on the undercard that we'll talk about. And then, of course, we'll talk about news. Devin Haney has an opponent. We'll talk about who that is and when that will take place and how much money they're getting, supposedly. Of course, we'll talk current fight news, like Gary Russell Jr. finding a fight. We don't know the date, but it is finalized now. It's a good opponent. Not what people really want to see as far as high profile by any stretch, but it is a good opponent. And boxing Twitter, of course, we'll have our boxing Twitter segment. I apologize. I got a few messages last week saying that I missed it, and I did. We just ran out of time. That's all it was. I thought I had a little bit of time left in the show, and we just kind of ran out of time. So I missed it last week, but we will have the boxing Twitter segment full of good stuff. You know, whether it's like a legit tweet where you're like, wow, that kind of sums it up, whether it's just funny fanboy tweets or it's the media acting like fanboys. A lot of different types of tweets that we go over in the boxing Twitter segment. We'll also breach the question of Jermall Charlo and Gennady Golovkin. Coppinger says, nope, there was no offer. Charlo says there was. We know there was a few years ago. We'll discuss that. And just a couple of other items as well. I've noticed a lot of folks, because UFC has managed to get a couple, I think it's 2 or 3, I think it's 2 fight cards, or at least part of the fight, on ABC. And Top Rank has yet to do that, besides, you know, the 50th anniversary stuff, which actually did a pretty good rating. No surprise there with Ali Frazier. But we'll talk about a variety of stuff in just a short little bit. If this is your first time listening to the Rope-A-Dope Radio podcast, welcome. It streams live right here on blogtalkradio.com/Rope-A-Dope Radio. It generally is Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday night. Sometimes it bleeds into Wednesday. You never know. You know, you don't have to go to Blog Talk and Rope-A-Dope and download the show directly there. You can. Or listen to the browser. You can. But if you don't want to, you can find the Rope-A-Dope Radio podcast, which is boxing and football and basketball, on Apple Podcasts, on iHeartRadio, at Player FM, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, almost across the board, really. We're also part of the Grueling Truth Sports Podcast Network, which can be found almost everywhere. While you're at it, why don't you head on over to thegruelingtruth.com. It's football, it's boxing, it's basketball, it's baseball, it's everything in between. And one more thing. If you're thinking about cutting the cord, or you're not quite happy, I got something for you. It's called AT&T TV Now. It's live streaming cable. They do have a 7-day free trial. You get a 7-day free trial of HBO Max just for showing up, or just for signing up. I guess that'd be showing up. If you actually go with the Max package, that'll already include HBO Max plus a free month of Showtime boxing fans. They do have a card this weekend, and an interesting card next month as well, along with show boxes. That's normally $11 a month. The plans start as low as $55 a month. You can stream it anywhere, of course, and they have the cloud DVR. That's AT&T TV Now. That's live streaming cable. Okay, let's get into some of this. We do have, a chunk to talk about anyway. Clarissa Shields, like I kind of was talking about at the front of this thing, it's going to be difficult for her until she gets, it's still going to be difficult, but as far as to continue to grow her brand and get bigger and bigger, because let's be honest, she actually is a name in the sport, at least over here in the States. I think she's proved it with some of her Showtime ratings, whether it was a showbox style on a Friday night or she did that healthy rating on Showtime a couple years back. She does get, like I said, she once in a while will get like a really good interview on a nice platform that doesn't have anything to do with boxing, just sports. So she is making a name for herself, whether you like her or not. Now, do I think some of the stuff she says is funny or goofy or what the hell you talking about? Yeah. The whole I'd be a billionaire if I was a guy is ridiculous, because, it just is. I mean, it took to create $1 billion of revenue, which, is the Mayweather thing. He was a champion in like 98, That McGregor-Mayweather, his last fight was 2017, so it didn't just happen in a few years. And it's all about who you fight, because Floyd had legitimate wins. But until he fought Gotti, until he fought Zab, and ultimately Oscar De La Hoya, it wasn't like there'd be more than 3 or 4 or 5,000 people in the seats a lot of the times. I mean, I think he had a hometown Manfredo. I think that did like 6,000 or 8,000. I had a couple of buddies that went to that back in the day. That I knew from when I was a little kid. But, it is what it is. But really the depth, I think, is the biggest thing. Now, like I was mentioning, just a weight class below, there are some better fighters. So maybe some of them will come up. Maybe she'll meet halfway. Katie Taylor has been tested down there. That's for damn sure. And Taylor and a couple of these, women boxers really looked the part of like, wow, dude, I don't see that much of a difference here. And I'm not trying to, I'm just being honest when I talk about this. I mean, I mentioned the NBA to the WNBA. I'd rather watch the NBA. Now, I'll say this. If you look at the men's soccer team and the women's soccer team, I do watch women's soccer just as much as I do men's soccer. That's just honest. I don't watch a lot of soccer. But if the women's team are on, I'm watching them. I played soccer as a youth, but also they've been so damn good. Here's an example, tennis. I mean, women's tennis, yeah, you had the top 4 dudes that are, 3 out of 4 are just studs, right, the last 15 years. But below them, there's not a whole lot. Look who's taken over now that Nadal and Federer are older and Murray's kind of fallen off. Djokovic's still there, but not many people. You still got these old dudes challenging Djokovic. Whereas in women's tennis, Serena, every couple of years there's a new Ukrainian or Russian or, I mean, the from top to bottom, top 20, top 50, and I'm not going to go too deep with this tennis thing, okay? But it's just better. More upsets happen. It's deeper. It's just deeper than the men's game. And so it's not like it can't happen. It's just a matter of how many, women that are going to be, that even watched Mayweather, that were amateurs, that even just watched boxing since it's been on national TV. Some of the big names, and obviously Clarissa. How many are going to get into that sport? That's really what's going to decide it. And you could get into it now, but it's not like you're going to be able to beat Shields in a couple of years. You know what I mean? So she's in a rough spot. She doesn't have a high-profile manager or promoter. She doesn't have a deal with a network, which we found really hurt her this time around, right? It does seem like Eddie Hernandez' zone is probably her best options, to be honest with you. But we'll see. She's damn good, and she does have the traits of countering and really setting up punches, and if you make a mistake, she'll make you pay for it. I did feel like she was going to have more power when I saw her in the Olympics, but that hasn't transferred. And maybe the 3-minute rounds would make that happen. I don't know. But she's going to have a little bit of issue just with, because if this is for all the 4 belts, like look at most of her fights with all these belts, and I'm not trying to discount the belts here, but, sometimes it's like you get a vacant belt or 2 vacant belts, you get it, and then the next fight you're fighting for all of them. And that's awesome. It's phenomenal. But, it's just, like I said, it's the depth. So it'll be interesting to see, how that works. Because her left-hand counter, her jab, her footwork, it was all on display. And that's like a rusty Shields, really. Now, she's always in shape. She's been training MMA. And I think her mentality in the ring and her mentality, it seems, outside of the ring, if she can get some fundamentals down, especially at the lower level MMA, not just jump right to the UFC, I think she has potential there. She definitely has potential there. She has the right, like I said, mentality for it. She's taken that training extra serious. And the Serrano, Hardy, there are some females that have kind of been bouncing back, and unfortunately, they're just in that situation. But I really respect the fact. But yeah, Clarissa looked great this weekend. Just to start some of the recap, she's just a damn good fighter. Person, Katie Taylor. What's that little short UK woman? I'm just losing her mind. Oh man, what was it? I just saw her like a couple months ago. She fought really well. She's slick. There's more and more, and you're starting to see, the amateur boxing in Mackay, or Mikhail Meyer. Like there are, you're starting to see it. You're starting to see it like in the amateurs, and obviously that'll help develop. But at the weight classes that Clarissa has been at, she's just so far above the talent there as of right now. And obviously you can kind of be fast-tracked, so maybe in a couple of years there would be somebody like that. I think she's going to either have to go down, like I mentioned, but she looked really, really good. And her opponent, she was feinting a lot. She had the look of a fighter that could have good footwork and all that, but she just, when she actually threw a right hand, she had a jab, but she was mostly feigning and moving. And she could, pivot pretty well and circle and whatnot. I'm not saying she didn't have any skill. But, it just, the talent gap was just super sizable to where you're like, it's going to be tough. You do need a name to pump people up. Now, that's where Taylor and some of those welterweights would work. Now, would that be big here? I don't know how big that would get here. But the combination of the UK and here, for that to hit, that would be pretty big. That would be pretty big for her. So, but my guess is I really want to see her in MMA as well, actually. Like I said, Serrano sisters do it. And, I don't know. I think you can have it, there's an in-between there. You can say, well, I'm not into it. Or some guys just don't like watching, two women punch each other a bunch. And I've heard that before. And if that's cool, if that's your thoughts, that's cool. Some people think, the sport's just got a little ways as far as skill level to get up to where I'm really, really interested in it. That's cool too. I try to watch as much as I can. And there are some women out there, 5 or 6 that I've identified. There's plenty more than that, but I'm just saying that I've identified where it's like, hey, she's a fighter, she's a boxer. Forget male stuff. And I do believe that with Shields. You can see it, and like I said, Katie Taylor and others, where they just have the technique honed down so much. They weren't just, and this happens in male fighting too, where you're a kickboxer and then you come into the, to male boxing and you're like, boy, that doesn't transfer well. Chris Algieri, there has been some, but not as many. I was very impressed with her performance. In a way, I do feel bad for her because there's only been a couple of females early in her career that can really land big punches like multiple times in a fight on her. And then it seems like her techniques just brought it to that next level of where she's barely getting hit now in some of these quote-unquote big-ass fights. And I'm not trying to downgrade the fight. I know all the belts were on the line and all that stuff, and undisputed now at 2 different divisions. That is something to look at and go, wow, that's an accomplishment, especially in the lack of fights that she has as a professional. But you just wonder the next couple of years what it's going to look like for her, unless she finds the way to have some of those females come up. Or like I said, I think she said something today in a quote that I'm going to have to, I need $1 million if I'm going to have to drop down another weight class. I think she spoke of like, if I'm going to have to, did she say lose her ass? Like she's going to lose weight or something? Or work my ass up? I forgot what it said on tweet. That's actually pretty funny if she said that though. But it's true. I mean, this is her third weight class she's gone down. So now, can she go down another one? I'm not sure. I don't know health-wise if that would be great. I don't know. But anyway, I thought she looked really good. I didn't get a chance to see much of the undercard. Saw some highlights. But I did get to see her fight. She dominated. I mean, she didn't drop a second of the fight, really. Like I said, the counter left hands. I just like how she makes – I know she's not a knockout fighter. Okay, a lot of folks aren't. But I like how she makes her opponent pay for mistakes. And like I said, just the counter. There were times in this fight where she was throwing right hands and really looking like she was actually going for the knockout. But yeah, she impressed me, man, especially for, like I keep mentioning, how long she was out of the ring. And I'm really interested to see I think the next time, I think she's going right back into training for MMA, and then she's going to have another boxing event, and then the MMA to close the year. So she's going to be busy. At least she's making some more money on the side with that too, dude. Who knows? That might be better money. I just want her to be successful as a fighter, however that comes to fruition. And she's got to do what she's got to do. But I really want to see her, with Katie Taylor and some of those other females in that division. And I got to go check to see, like, I'm thinking like size-wise, Taylor, I wonder how many could even come up or maybe meet you halfway. Anyway, a great performance from her, no doubt. There was the Ring City USA, which this was kind of funky. The first while, and actually kind of throughout the whole thing, they were having sound issues. It just kept skipping. Like, luckily, the pitcher, nothing happened to the pitcher. But it would like double up or you'd miss something. It was kind of a weird thing there. So there are times where I'm like, what did the ref do? I can't really, I needed to kind of hear what that was all about, because the refs, I should say, in general, seemed to be involved in all of the fights. But Brandon Adams got an upset off of, Boachuk, 18-0. 18 KOs. A lot of folks, especially on boxing Twitter and amongst the media, were very, very high on Boachuk. In fact, they were just mentioning Golovkin, in a sense. I'm not saying they're lining him up exactly with that, but they were just saying, it looked like Adams was now fading fairly fastly, right? And he was getting the ring cut off on him. He was getting on the ropes and whatnot. And they were just mentioning Golovkin, and all of a sudden the fight changed. But I thought Adams won the first couple of rounds. I gave him the first two. It was like a difference of like 2 or 3 really hard left hooks a lot of the times. And he was just getting the better of the exchanges, I felt. And he was winning the third round until there was a point deducted. And I still thought Adams, like I said, won the round or was winning it. He landed the better shots, but they thought it was a low blow, and it was kind of like a shoe shine, and then I think it was the right hand that landed, I guess you could say, on the lower part of the belt. I wouldn't go and call that a low blow, especially when Boachuk was going low too a little bit. So that was a little like, wow, that was early. And you could tell by like mid-fight, the fighters were sliding all around, especially on the middle logo. They talked about humidity, and I'm sure that played a role. But that logo in the middle, I could have sworn on another fight they had a little problem with that too. But that logo, they were sliding all over the place. And finally someone started wiping that. They had a mop out there. The mop broke. It was kind of funny. But after that, Boachuk started taking over. Hooks to the body and the head, closing stronger in rounds, using his jab. Jab right hands, like I said, body work in general. And it seemed like Adams Now he was on the move more, and he was reaching too much with some of his punches, and Boachuk was just landing the better shot, in my opinion. And like I said, the broadcaster was just talking about Golovkin and kind of matching him up with Boachuk right before the knockout. It was a left hook that rocked him pretty bad. And then I think it was a right hand and then a hard left hook, I think is what did it. And Boachuk went down really, really hard. They called it a TKO, and it was a great win by Adams. I mean, I did think Adams' corner was in Boachuk's face talking a little too much. Not like bad, like talking shit. It wasn't like, at least I couldn't see that. But they were like saying good fight so much. It was, maybe it was just the ring was so crowded too, because it was a littler ring too. But it just seemed like they were there for a while, and I thought like, hey, this dude just got knocked out. Like everybody give him room. It seemed like other people were near him. It's like, hey, just give this guy some room. He just got knocked out. But a great win by Brandon Adams, and you could tell his corner and Adams were just so elated, especially how they got that knockout, with that win. And they were, it didn't look good after the first 3 rounds. I mean, maybe the 4th round was in between, but 5th, 6th, 7th, and even in that round in the 8th, Boachuk was winning that. It felt like he was winning the fight clearly by that time. When we will talk a little bit more about some of that undercard and whatnot. Of course, we will preview and predict the rematch between Juan Francisco Estrada and Roman Gonzalez on DAZN this weekend. There are some other fights. We'll preview some upcoming bouts on the undercards and whatnot, show boxes tomorrow and whatnot. So we'll get to that in just a second. I'm going to go ahead and bring in a regular, becoming a regular here, John, into the fold here. By the way, the number to dial is 646-381-4990. That's 646-381-4990. You have an hour if you're in the browser, listening to the show. You have an hour until the archive area comes. Then you'll have to dial that number. But you're cool right now. But every few weeks we try to bring John on the show. And this is such a big fight weekend, hardcore fight weekend at least, with this rematch here that's come 8-9 years later. It's good to have a great boxing mind on. I'm going to go ahead and bring in John. What's going on, John? How the hell are you, man?
Good. Enjoyed listening to you lead up to things here with a recap of last week's action. And like you said, we got some dramatic action set for this weekend. So good to be here with you as always and get a chance to talk about it.
Heck yeah, man. What are some of your thoughts with Clarissa Shields in general? I mean, there's not a lot to take from the fight as far as competitiveness because she just dominated. But maybe just some thoughts on her or the fight or whatever. And also that Ring City, USA card, including the main event. What are your thoughts on some of that?
Well, first, as you touched on, Chris, regarding Clarissa Shields, I think, we are seeing some evolution in the positives of the women's game as we've had women have had a chance to actually have an amateur upbringing and pedigree, which they didn't have in the early advent of women's boxing. And you could see that a lot of course, Clarissa Shields is a 2-time gold medalist. And as you also, alluded to, you have Michaela Mayer, who was Olympian, Katie Taylor, and you can see how they're schooled and they have the talent. And of course, Clarissa Shields is arguably at the top of the class. I think first of all, I think it's a big problem. I've been saying it for years. It's asinine that the women have to fight 2-minute rounds when boxing is 3-minute rounds, and that's what the men fight. They started it out with no justification at all, and then the WBC, being its usual shameful self, they came in and tried to do an after-the-fact medical justification. And, when they did that, it was relatively recently, Chris, and I do have some background in that, frankly. with the kind of work I do on the injury lawyer part of my work, about cross-examining physicians or looking at the credentials of physicians and things like that. And when Suleiman said that, again, probably within the last year, I went back and looked at a couple of the talks supposedly at the WBC convention and the people who he was using as his experts to justify it. And one of them was not a legitimate expert that had any basis to be commenting on neurology, certainly not boxing being somehow more dangerous for women than men if they went 3-minute rounds. One of the experts he cited was a real expert, a neurologist from California, but that's not what she said. If you read her work and what she's even said at their convention, that really was not what she said. I mean, that was the way he tried to interpret it. So it's really ridiculous. You know, I mean, it's like kind of the logic of saying that, you know, a male boxer is more at risk because if he's fighting in a 3-minute round instead of a 2-minute round, he's got more chance to get punched in the head and get a concussion. So why I'm talking about that is, as you were talking and a lot of people talking, I agree. I mean, I think that the 2-minute rounds, you know, Clarissa Shields has been handicapped by that. You know, you can't get the KOs that the males get when you're fighting 2-minute rounds. And I think that's really hurting the women's sport, because you even look at, you know, the top fighters we're talking about, like, you know, Katie Taylor and Michaela Mayer and Clarissa Shields, and their KO percentages are lower. So I think that hurts some. The other thing that I think was a missed opportunity, and this would just have been a chance for the women's game to take advantage of the fact of how men's boxing had gotten so ridiculously messed up, as any serious fan of the sport knows, who's been followed any length of time. You know, the women's game, if you would have gone a couple decades back, you don't even have to quite go that far. You know, you have sort of a clean slate, even though you can criticize some things. You know, we know Dana White doesn't have to pay his fighters as much. We don't like that part of it, but UFC did have a clean slate in terms of the rules, and they could get rid of some of the excesses and the ridiculousness that came in boxing from the too many weight classes and the too many sanctioning bodies, too many titles. The women had a chance to do that, and then what happens is the sanctioning bodies get involved, and they start having 1 million weight classes for the women and 1 million belts, when, as you talked in your intro, you don't have the talent pool as it is. So I think that's hurt, because we're already talking about all kinds of multiple belts and weight classes. And, you know, we've got female heavyweights when there's like 5 people, you know, 5 people in a division. I mean, of course I'm exaggerating, but
it's like 14 or 18 or something like that. It's really low, though. You know, it's worth mentioning.
And you know, you just, there wasn't a reason to mimic all of these terrible things that have crept into men's boxing and you know, art and severely damaged the sport. So I thought that was a shame that, you know, the sanctioning bodies worked their way in there and started doing the same stuff, and the promoters then going along with it. So that in the 2-minute rounds hurts. But I think the good part is, you know, we're getting a lot more talented women than we had some years ago, and it's good for them to get the chance to get the exposure. I think the 3-minute round thing needs to come. There's no reason for that not to come. I think that should actually be able to easily be challenged, because I don't think the supposed medical justification that the WBC's thrown out there would ever hold up. It's just a discriminatory basis. So
right, in UFC, you know, they don't have a problem with the females going 5 minutes either in their rounds. So it really doesn't line up in general.
And it's the Nevada Athletic Commission, you know, say in Nevada, you know, they sanction UFC bouts for females, just like it's, you know, you have female boxing. You go around all the states. So exactly, it's just ripe for a challenge. It's got no business being in the women's boxing rule book. I think, you know, it should go. I'm surprised it hasn't gone already, but still having to deal with it is a problem. It's definitely unfair to the women, and it is, I think, discriminatory because I don't think it would hold up on a rational basis. So I think that needs to go. The Ring City card, Adams, since he came back, he lost to John Thompson by KO in that ESPN Boxino tournament, the final, and he basically retired after that, was gone for about 3 years. And it's very rare you would say this, but with him, he's proven it. I mean, somehow he's come back as a better fighter. And I did see that going into this fight with Bohachuk last week. I did tweet it out beforehand. And I'm the first to say I was skeptical of this Adams comeback, even still going into the Jermall Charlo fight, which I didn't think was particularly entertaining, but I have a lot of respect for the ability of Jermall Charlo, and Adams, went the full 12 and really didn't get seriously hurt or anything. And I still
he handled himself like a professional in that fight, even though it was a one-sided loss.
Yeah, and you look back at it now, and it's really looking like a good loss, and it looks like a good win for Jermall Charlo, because when this fight with Bohachuk was first scheduled and then Bohachuk got the COVID and had to pull out, Adams, he faced a substitute opponent on very short notice. And you got to watch how you evaluate something like that. But was a competent fighter, and just the way he went through him with power. I'm like, you looked at that, he beat Heatrov, who, was extremely highly touted. I thought a lot of him myself, the Ukrainian middleweight, until he was upset by Aleem in one of the fights of the year in a great war. But then Adams got a win over him. That's when I first, was looking at it, and I thought, even with Heatrov having that loss to Aleem, it's hard to believe he lost to Brandon Adams. That might be kind of fluky, but Adams just kept building and building, and you see this power coming to his game now that you didn't see. I'll even call it his first career, because he's one of those guys who looks better since he's come back. And, I think people talk about him now being a dangerous gatekeeper. I think he's moved beyond that level. 154 is so strong, and, you can't say he's top 10 yet, but he's right on the cusp. And, fighting at the traditional middleweight division, 160 pounds, there's actually a little less depth there right now. He's fought at that weight before. I think the guy's a top 10 threat at this point. I think he's made that much progress. And now, thinking out loud as we're talking about it, the only guy I can remember really doing that and coming back better was really Mickey Ward, who was kind of a boring boxer, who was known as being skilled, but just didn't throw a lot of punches and had picked up some losses where he looked uninspired, and then came back and still didn't necessarily always have the volume, but he developed that brutal body shot that he became famous for, and had those memorable wars, and he took a lot of punishment, but he came back as a better fighter than when he first went away for a few years. So in that sense, maybe Adams reminds me a little bit of the Mickey Ward comeback. And then, of course, on a much higher level and much more extraordinary level, he had George Foreman be away for 10 years. And some people might have thought he'd come back better. That's always a tough one to debate, but when you look at what he accomplished. So very rare, but I'm going to put Adams. I'm not saying he's George Foreman, but he probably does fit more into that Mickey Ward category as a guy who somehow has come back a little bit better than when he left.
Yeah, that's interesting. I can't, right when you're, like you said, you're thinking aloud, and I started doing the same thing, like, who would be a good, comp to that? Because you don't see that much, especially someone that hadn't hit some, big peak and then take a couple years off. We've seen plenty of that, but I'm not even talking 10 years for him, but, guys take 2 years off or whatever, 3 years off before, and Ali obviously had to take 3 or 3.5 years off or whatever it was for other reasons, of course. But yeah, it was a really good win. It was a really good win, and like I said, I agree. I mean, I think you can put him on that lower half of the top 10, because this guy and a couple other ones that are coming, especially Eastern European dudes, they were like, I saw a lot of the hardcore fight fan base and some of the media saying, hey, 154 is actually not that good, until these guys come up. Then it'll be really deep, which always kind of makes me laugh because it was like, well, I mean, it's still good because you don't know what the hell's going to happen. And no one's saying it's the best division in boxing, talent for talent, top 4 or whatever. But, he clearly was a guy that people labeled as, hey, this dude's coming. And I've seen plenty of people in the last year that were saying this dude's going to knock out Charlo and all that. So some of it was hearsay, whatever, not hearsay, but hyperbolic stuff where you're like, okay, dude, we get it. No matter what Eastern European fighter comes, you're going to just say that, But some of it was real legit, and he had 18 KOs and whatnot. But I'd have to agree. I think Adams is kind of snuggled into that area.
I think you make a good point there, Chris. Actually, you kind of what you said dovetails into something else I was going to mention. I think it's a good time to bring it up because it's exactly kind of what you were getting at. I think a lot of the world has underestimated in very recent years when you start looking through all the divisions, in terms of talent, outside of the heavyweights, and we can discuss that a little bit where the potential might be even there. American boxing is really coming back talent wise. You start looking at the divisions, and if you start really breaking it down and looking at it, there's a lot of American talent coming up, and I think like you said, some people might point out some of the Eastern Europeans or maybe even some of the here and there some of the other Brits and Europeans, but you look at the Americans that are coming up now. At heavyweight, this is the best British heavyweight era literally of all time in terms of depth. I've been saying that for a while, and I don't think that's in dispute. Credit to the Brits there, but Wilder's getting older with the Americans. You're going to have Jared Anderson's looking good. Coffey's an interesting project because he's already in his mid-30s and he started late. I don't know if that gives him the ability to get to the top. He looks good. Yeah, Hunter has surged. That's a good point. And, I think a very young guy, he's officially at a cruiserweight, but that won't be for long when you look at his age, how young he is in height. Tristan Kalkruth doesn't get talked about enough. I think he's going to be in that mix. And heavyweight is certainly where the Americans are not as deep, but or at the top necessarily, depending on what happens with Wilder the rest of the way. But the other divisions, you've got all kinds of threats, and it gets particularly deep, around the welterweight division, and guys who can fight at 140 pounds are probably going to end up fighting at welterweight 147. All kinds of American talent, and we've seen these guys even coming up. Then of course lightweight, we've got all this American talent. You got guys at 130 pounds like Colbert and Foster coming up, and then you've got guys down around featherweight like you've got Fulton at 122 pounds, and of course you got Gary Russell at the top of 126. People can talk about him not fighting that much, but he's got the talent.
Shakur Stevenson at 130. Oscar Valdez just won at
and you got Ryan Garcia, of course. Tank Davis. There's just so much.
Aleem,
so much American.
Yeah, Aleem too. Like, dude.
Yeah, Reese Aleem looked tremendous in his last outing. Yeah, another 122 pound. And this is not, so to speak, traditional American division. You're getting down to 122 pounds. Talking about these guys, it gets a little thin around bantamweight and flyweight then. But then even at 108 pounds, you've got Bam Rodriguez, who looks as good of a prospect as anybody, and he's already in the legit rankings at 108 pounds. We know we've got a lot of weight divisions, but he's very young. So there's just there's a lot of American talent. Just be interesting to see if it can develop at heavyweight as well. But I think this is going to be I think we've already entered it, really. This is going to be another big era for American boxing.
Yeah, a lot of, it's funny because I was going to message you here in the coming days for a segment of this. So let's stash that to the side. Yep,
Yeah,
because I was going to say, it'd just be like, hey, like, so is the Eastern European takeover already happened, or is it supposed to happen? Because when is it going to happen? Because I'm still waiting for it. Budding rivalry, the UK-US, we got that going, but a lot of Uzbekistan's popping off now too, with a lot of good fighters coming up. It's not that we don't respect them. It's not that we don't want to see added depth to the world of boxing and all these divisions and stuff. Hell yeah. But let's not forget about what's developed right here. Like you said, I can't really think of, even if you look at that 2012 team, U.S. team. Now when you look back at it, they're a bunch of chumps back then, right? Like, oh, this is disappointing. This is horrendous. How nobody medals, And then look at them in the pros now. They've managed to find a belt or two or three or four,
Oh yeah, those guys. That exactly. I mean, that team is looking a lot better when you look at how those guys performed. And I've tweeted about this a lot, but I did. I go back and forth between West Virginia and New Jersey, and it was kind of an odd thing, but it was interesting and a good setting to be able to talk to these people. The junior, U.S. Junior championships were in Charleston, West Virginia, quite a few years because they found it a good small city for things to be accessible and for the young boxers to be able to walk around and stuff and get to talk to some of the coaches. As a matter of fact, Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney fought there. One of their amateur fights was there. They fought a few times in the amateurs, and but the coaches were, I had thought that this might help, and the coaches were saying, thank God, we got rid of that amateur point punching counting system, which was just ruining the American amateurs. Wasn't really a traditional U.S. style of fighting, and then they had to try to adopt to it, and you just saw American pros, a lot of them not quite as good as they were. They were doing some of that in and out and just, pitter-pattering. Like again, that came from when you had to try to win amateur fights with that punch scoring system, which was well-intentioned, but the way it played out was just ludicrous. And they've disposed of it finally. But I think now the amateur, and they've gotten rid of the headgear. I think it fits into the American style, traditionally the way the amateurs used to fight a little better, and I think that's something that helps a little bit going forward. So I think that's been a helpful factor as well.
Yeah, I think some of the World Boxing Super Series in general has helped a lot of fighters, not just from here, but a lot of fighters in general. I also think the popularity of Mayweather here helped a kid that was 8 or 10 or 12 already involved in boxing. And something to, he crossed over to the mainstream, so it got in people's heads. And he was a small dude doing it too. He didn't need the heavyweight knockout or even be a middleweight or whatever. So I think that plays into it too, because no matter what style of fighter comes up now, they all talk about Floyd. Mayweather, that's what I really like to watch. Like, I think that helped too. We kind of forget that Mayweather can have an effect in a variety of ways with his popularity, that 10-year run that he had of that, where he was, fighting some mega events and whatnot and staying in the limelight, obviously for better or worse. But as far as what he did in his boxing career, in his discipline and all that, that can't be questioned as a boxer, not a normal, quote-unquote, civilian person or whatnot. As far as
I just want to say that's a good point, though, Chris. Yep. Sorry, but that is a good point, because there are some people whose boxing knowledge I respect a lot pointed out exactly what you're saying, that in addition to that, you did have a lot of young boxers inspired by the fighting example, like you pointed out, of Floyd Mayweather. I mean, this was a guy that was on MTV Cribs, and he definitely knew how to and continues to know how to market himself. But that inspires a lot of younger people when you know how to market yourself like that.
Yeah, exactly. And it just makes you think, hey, wait, I can be a boxer. Like, let's go the boxing route. And you see the money, and it's a little different. And even fans that turned into doing podcasting, a lot of them say, it was Mayweather that got me into the sport more, or got me more focused, or I saw that 39-0 or 42-0 thing, and like, really? Oh my God, I got to see this, and that type of thing. So I don't think a lot of folks give him credit for that, but I think it's pretty blatant because, like I said, these young kids are coming up with all sorts of different styles, but they talk about him as one of their favorite fighters for obvious reasons. But, yeah, imagine being a 10-year-old kid and you're already in the amateurs. How couldn't you be influenced by Floyd Mayweather? It'd be impossible. Just like, it's on a lower scale right now, Clarissa, she's she's already inspired a lot, too, being in those 2 Olympics and whatnot. But yeah, things are a lot healthier than folks like to talk. Now, if we could just, keep getting the sport together in general. So we got a big fight coming up, rematch style from a long, long time ago. It's funny, John, because if this was heavyweight or welterweight or middleweight, the media and the fans would have been screaming for this matchup so many years ago. Like, where is the rematch going to happen? This is bullshit, blah, 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 blah. I don't even want to see it anymore, all that type of stuff. Like, some people say they don't want to see Crawford Spence anymore. It's like, oh, really? Oh, you're not going to buy it? Okay, sure. But it is kind of funny how, we kind of take only the good from these weight classes because they can make the fights a lot of times because there's not a lot of heavy guarantee minimums. That helps a lot. But the hardcore fight fan base, I can't remember. I kind of think it was Steve Kim, but I can't remember who coined the term flyweight wars when a lot of these guys, about 7 or 8 of them, kept fighting each other. It was like a large round robin. And it kind of started right in the time frame, 2012. It kind of started right then and there with this fight. Roman Gonzalez against Estrada was a really, really good fight. For a while, I thought that it was a draw, or it could have been close to a draw. Maybe that was just me loving Estrada more, which I can admit. It took a while just in general for this type of stuff to even be big amongst media members, to be honest with you. And I think obviously Roman Gonzalez coming to HBO, that helped a lot. And even Showtime, they would always, not always, but for a while, they would do a lot of these lighter weight classes and even kind of updated lighter, like that 118 four-man tournament that Abner Mares won and stuff like that. So in somewhat recent times, not even in the mid-2000s, because a lot of times Showtime would highlight the smaller guys when HBO wasn't. But I think that just a combination of all this kind of built up, and a lot of people thought Roman Gonzalez wasn't getting his just due, but I think people forget for about 30 fights or something, he hadn't really fought anybody. So it was kind of like, all right, dude, we know you exist. We know you're knocking people out, but let's see something. I remember seeing him against Nikoshi, or he fought Donaire on HBO, the Japanese fighter. He had just beaten Juan Manuel Marquez's brother. And I went to that. I went to that at the MGM. It was at a ballroom, and Gonzalez was on the card. That guy missed weight, so unfortunately, I think he fought Soto or something. It wasn't a good fight. He just knocked him out. But it took a while for Gonzalez to actually fight somebody. Sometimes it takes guys 20, 30, 40 fights. Sometimes, we see a whole different ball game, especially with the Eastern Europeans when they come over here because they fought so many times, or even like Teofimo right now. If you look at his, how many fights he has. Long story short, we are here. And it's just been fun to watch these guys. Estrada's kind of slowly but surely followed Roman Gonzalez up in weight. Gonzalez won the first fight all the way back to 2012. What are your thoughts on this rematch? What'd you think of the first fight? How do you see this one playing out, man?
I have a lot of respect for, Roman Gonzalez, Chocolatito, in terms of, to me, the problem down there, and you've kind of touched on it a little bit already. There's too many weight classes. We don't need a 105. We don't need a 108. We don't need a 115. Now, what's good about what Roman Gonzalez has done, and as you said, Estrada's following doing the same way. Starting at 105, and going through 108, 112, now 115. To me, what got Roman Gonzalez on my radar screen was I saw him doing things that I always thought that Ricardo Lopez should have done and just didn't do. Really didn't challenge himself like that, even though you could see in the ring he had talent. He fought a lot of guys at 105 pounds weren't that good. Fought a couple of fights at 108 at the end, and then he retired. The best guy he fought, he was 1-0-1 with and got dropped, dropped by him, Alvarez. So, I'm not saying he didn't have a lot of talent, but really what he accomplished despite all the alphabet stuff wasn't proven. I always felt for a while now that Roman Gonzalez, even with the 2 losses to Sor Rungvisai, that's coming up later in his career as he was going up more in weight, 115 pounds, which if you go in the traditional weight class, it would be a bantamweight. So, I always like to break it down like that. I still like to break it down in the traditional way to get perspective on it. So, I look at it like, he was proven a great flyweight, and then, he's had some good fights at bantamweight, and Estrada's followed along, and now they're going to get it on again. But you do make a good point about how there, could be sort of a reverse bias. No one's saying that the rematch came. We don't care about this rematch because it came 8 years later and it's too late.
Right.
And who cares about this fight? I'm not saying that they should, but we're not hearing any of that. Now, getting to the fight itself, they had a good fight the first time, competitive. Estrada's a good fighter. Gonzalez, I think, in both their prime there, proved to be a little bit better. Now Gonzalez 33, Estrada about 30. People are forgetting, even for 115 pounders, even as good as these guys are, this is old, definitely old for these weights, really older, even nowadays when people can last a little bit longer with nutrition and advanced training methods, things of that nature. But I think for these weights, I give Roman Gonzalez for at least picking up some wins after those losses to Sor Rungvisai. He got brutally knocked out in the second fight. I thought he did enough to earn the decision in the first fight. It was close, very close.
As did I.
Yeah,
I think so.
I thought despite getting dropped in that fight, I thought he deserved a decision. But one thing you could see in the second fight, and I feel like I've seen since he's come back from that, he's still got a lot of will. He's got good pop even for fighting at 115 pounds. But with that said, he's getting slow for the weight class. And I think for me that's going to make the difference. Sor Rungvisai is a big puncher, no doubt about that. KO percentage very high, especially 115 pounds. So he's really a huge puncher for that weight, no doubt about that. So no shame in getting caught by him. But with that said, what I see as a problem for Gonzalez that, I don't think would necessarily be cured by now a few years later either is, he was getting beat to the punch by Sor Rungvisai in that second fight. And that's what ended up getting him knocked cold. And he obviously hasn't gotten any faster since then. And, Estrada's getting older too, but I think he's quicker at this point. I don't think a little bit. I think he's quicker at this point. And he looked like he was, that last fight with Cuadras, he looked like he was banging with a little bit more authority because, Cuadras hasn't had any problems with durability. And Estrada was definitely hurting him. You could say maybe Cuadras was slipping at this point some, but still, I think I'm looking at that and combining those factors. I think that this time around, Estrada is going to turn it around. I definitely feel he's going to win the fight. I was going back and forth between would it be a decision or would it be a KO. I think I'm going to go with the KO for the reasons I've stated. I think Gonzalez is just getting slow for that weight class. The opposition's been okay since he's been back picking up wins, but it's not anything spectacular. You got to eliminate the too many weight classes and the alphabet belt stuff. I think you do when you're making your evaluations. That's what I always do. I find it gives me clarity. We might need a cruiserweight nowadays. I'll give it that, but we don't need these other weight classes. So they're just kind of artificial things that you don't need. They don't have anything to do with competitive advantage, these added weight classes, below cruiserweight. So, all that put together, I just think that probably Gonzalez is just past his best enough that I think Estrada is going to be able to stop him in this one. I don't feel as certain about the stoppages. I feel pretty confident Estrada's going to win, even though I think it'll be a good fight. But I think I have settled on I think Estrada's going to be able to get him out of there before it's over.
And are you thinking more of the TKO-ish or something like the Rung Visai where he really just knocks him out?
I would think more of the TKO type of a thing.
Yeah.
Just that Gonzalez getting beat to the punch again, getting a little too slow at 33 years old. Just getting he was always a pressure guy even before that. You have to be quick. You have to have some degree of speed in those weight classes. You have to. Just like heavyweights normally got to have some power. It's the exact opposite in the lower classes. So, you have to have some speed there. But I think that, he's losing his. And he just kind of got to force things. He's still possessing some pop. So, I wouldn't say it's a situation where he can't hurt Estrada, but Estrada's a pretty skilled guy. Been fighting, really too. He was a little cautious, and again, he's in with a very big punch for that weight. But his first fight with Rung Visai, a little bit too cautious in the first half of the fight. Picked it up, won the second half of that fight, even though I thought Rung Visai won it. But then I did think he'd win that rematch because he seemed to figure it out, got his confidence, and he did. He clearly won that rematch between those two. So what I'm getting to there is I think Estrada's, he's found his stride. He's on a roll, and I think this probably should be his pinnacle where I think he'll just start catching Gonzalez with some shots as Gonzalez comes in and tries to force the action and just doesn't have the quickness he needs anymore. And I think Estrada will just be hitting him with too many shots, and he'll be able to end it at some point.
Yeah, as long as he's not on the ropes exchanging too many times, because that's what kind of got him in trouble the first fight. I think that's a good, really great way to break it down. Any other items that you'd like to discuss in the world of boxing, or maybe another fight that you want to talk about, or anything like that, John?
Yeah, Chris, just looking with the rest of the weekend, of course, we also have Rung Visai. I mentioned him a few times. He is fighting on Friday night, but he's fighting a 38-year-old. He hasn't been putting himself in too tough in some of these fights between the bigger names, so I'm not expecting too much unusual there, although in some of those interim fights, as we might call them, Rung Visai actually hasn't looked that good. So, and he's 34 years old, so these guys are, you got to remember.
He also doesn't have the best diet either, I'll say.
No, right. This is not, he's not eating to win, right? This is not heavyweight. I mean, these guys, these guys are not heavyweights. At these ages, mid-30, Rung Visai 34. They're nearing the end of the line more. So you have to keep that in mind. But you've got David Benavidez coming back, fighting Ellis. Ellis is not a world beater, but he's not terrible. I expect Benavidez to win and probably be by KO, but I'm a little surprised that Benavidez is such a huge favorite. I don't like him fighting at 168 pounds. I've debated this with some other people. I think weight, as you've heard me talk about, a lot of cases it's overrated, but he's one guy that I did watch him from very early on the way up. He's a guy, when he was a kid, he weighed way in the 200s, even as a kid, as a young teenager. And I just think 168 is actually too low for him. I think when he has to actually make that 168, he looks weak a lot of the time. And I've seen him fight on the way up when he didn't have to weigh in at 168, where he could weigh in the 170s. And yes, the opposition is a little lesser, but he looks so powerful and explosive that I just think light heavyweight's the lowest weight he should be at. So I don't mean that's going to cost him against Ellis, but it wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't make the weight. And I just think for Benavidez, he's still only 24 to be straining to make 168 when he was so heavy younger. I just have a feeling in his case it's not good for him. I know there's a lot of money there with Canelo in that division, even though these fights are very difficult to make. I get that, but I just think it's time for him to give up the 168 thing. So I'm going to be as curious about that weigh-in almost as much as the fight, though I think Ellis is more of a competent fighter than he's being given credit for here. I would have liked to seen somebody else, but I don't think it's a dreadful fight, even though I would have liked to seen somebody else there. And Isaac Cruz is also on that card. We talk about, the talent, the American talent. Of course, the Mexicans have a lot of talent too. And the Mexicans, as they work their way up, a lot of times then they're fighting in the U.S. And Cruz is a guy like that. And he's coming off that explosive KO where he looked like a little Mike Tyson against Magdaleno.
And I was surprised at that. Not that he won, but the way he did it.
I was too, and it was very, very impressive. He's got everybody excited to see him again. He's only 22 years old, so look out for this guy. He's fighting an undefeated guy from Argentina, Jose Romero. Romero, not a puncher though. I would not want to be in with this Isaac Cruz guy right now if I didn't have much pop. He's nicknamed the Pitbull. I think that's a good nickname for him. So I think looking for him to tear into somebody Saturday night. So I'm curious about that. Abdukakarov has moved over to PBC from Top Rank welterweight. He's also on the card, I believe. He has not looked as good to me his last couple of fights, and I did like him when he was first getting on the radar screen. He was punching with more power, and I just don't know, what's gone off with him, but he's coming over to here to fight now. He's with PBC. I think for him, you're looking, do we see some improvement there? Because we know how strong the division is. We know there's all kinds of great matchups to be involved in if you're a welterweight with PBC. So I think he's a guy that needs to show some improvement. And tomorrow night, Brandon Lee's fighting on Showbox. Some people don't like Lee as much. I am sold on Lee's power. And he just looks big and strong to me. He's fighting as a 140-pounder. Even though he's making weight okay, I saw he weighed in at 139.7. He's a guy I see as a welterweight. He just looks big and strong and powerful to me. We'll have to see with some of his other dimensions, but he's a guy that I'm pretty much unlike some others. I think I'm sold on Brandon Lee's power already. So I think he's a guy worth watching because he's going to be exciting with that power.
I hear what you're saying about David Benavidez because although on fight night it doesn't look like it, hurts him as of right now. Of course, we don't know. If he went to 175, maybe he would look even better. But like you said, though, on the scale, you can see he just doesn't look good on the scale whatsoever. And
exactly.
I think that, there's not many more fights he's going to be able to have at this weight class, but it does seem like he's willing to, keep making the weight. We'll see. But, there's really no excuse this time around. I know he used the excuse of the bubble, but, fighters have been in the bubble since mid-June when Top Rank started. So I don't really think, and all these hundreds of fighters had to be, or maybe more like 50 or 60, had to be in the bubble. And so to me, that's not a good enough excuse. That's how the Charlos bring their own makeshift sauna thing that they plugged into the wall. You know what I mean? So you got to do what you got to do. I just don't use that as an excuse. But this time, if he did it, then it's like, all right, dude, you got to move up. So we'll see. Once again, a great follow on Twitter. Why don't you go ahead and give the folks your Twitter handle there, sir?
Thanks, Chris. It's John Einreinhofer, and on Twitter you can find me at Real John E. That's JOHN letter E Law LAW. Real John E Law on Twitter. John Einreinhofer. Be happy to have you give me a follow. Talk about boxing, whatever else you want to talk about, and thanks for having me on, Chris. We will have to do that more in-depth discussion about the American boxing we talked about, and being on with you as always.
Definitely, man. We're still waiting for that takeover, John. I don't know when it's coming, but they keep telling us it's coming. All right, buddy, you take it easy.
All right, take care, Chris.
All right, later.
Bye.
All righty, John. I always bring in a lot to the show. Like I said, dude has been around the block when it comes to being a boxing fan, whatever you want to call it. You could just be like, hey, and like, what was the, in 1986, that type of stuff. Anytime there's like a great ESPN or Fox fight and the rating does well, he'll say, man, that really brings me back to so-and-so in 1983 or whatever. I remember he posted this month of boxing on CBS and ABC, and you see these fights, and you're like, my God, like, wow. Anyway, and that's when I was a little kid, so I remember some of those fights, but not to the layer of that. So we will definitely keep things moving. Wood is going to come in here in just a moment. We will talk about Devin Haney's next fight. We'll have some current fight news. We'll definitely get to the boxing Twitter segment. Gary Russell Jr. has a fight against a quality opponent, but at this point, you just hope that this is finally going to be the year, knock on wood if you can hear that he fights not at once, but at twice. And if he can get this fight out of the way in the coming months, he'll have, I was going to say he's going to have training camp, he'll get any kind of rust off, and then he'll be ready, but we don't. We don't know. It does seem, I'll say this, though, it does seem like he wants to fight twice a year now. Whereas before, when you'd ask him about that, or when other folks would ask him about that, he was okay with just once a year. But it does look like he's starting to get to up in age where he's like, you know what, I'm going after the big fights. And I'll say this, though. His last few mandatories have been solid. I mean, he fought Jojo Diaz, King Tug, the one, Ray Vargas is a good fight. So he hasn't been fighting these like slough-offs by any means. But it is frustrating with the guy, that talented. And I've talked about it before that, sometimes in the past he has been offered a fight, but he didn't think it was enough money in there, which that's cool too. I mean, that happened with Frampton, and that's fair. I get it, but you can't sit there and say people are ducking you if they are offering you $1 million. I'm not saying, would it be a pay cut? Sure, it sounds like it would, but then again, you could have just had a unification, maybe knocked out, not Frampton, but knocked out Warrington. Who knows how that fight would go. It is what it is. It is what it is, but it does seem like he wants to kind of go out with a bang. So he'll start his career as far as at the championship level with a bang, because he sure did with some of the guys he fought early, and then it's kind of been low once a year since like 2014, 15, something like that. So we will get to some of this news in just a short little bit here. I'll give my breakdown, preview, and prediction of the big fight coming up this weekend. I'm going to go ahead and bring in Wood into the frame. What's going on, Wood? How the hell are you, buddy?
Oh man, I'm pretty good, man. A lot of boxing this week. Excited about that. I love the midweek cards, so definitely excited about tomorrow. And then Action Friday with the Sor Rungvisai fight. I don't have much big expectations for that one, but I'll check it out. And then Saturday, I just think is, how could you not be upbeat about that? Yeah,
exactly. I do find it. I don't know when you got on. Well, actually, I do know when you get on. But it is kind of funny how I just don't know if I said it after or before, but I think you were on. But it is kind of funny how if this was at a higher division, people would have been like, dude, I don't even want to see the fight now. Fuck this, dude. It's been 9 years. You know what I mean? But it's just been fun because both of them have kind of, sure, they'll stay busy, then they take on another good opponent. Then they'll stay busy, take on another good opponent. They've been going up in weight, a couple weight classes. So they've kept this occupied. It does seem like Estrada would get up to the weight, and then Gonzalez is like, because I remember his first thing is, I want $1 million for that fight. And he was making like $300,000 or $500,000 at that time. And I said, that's legit. I get it. And then it was $2 million for it. And I really think it was his people, not him. But it was kind of like one of those things that a lot of folks would be freaking the F out if this was a different division. But the fact that we got the flyweight wars from like 2012 to 2015, 16, and the bantamweights, and there's been a lot of round robin in those 112, 115 and up, and it's starting to happen at 122 again now too. 118's pretty damn solid too. We can start there and give your thoughts of that. Otherwise, we can kind of talk about Clarissa Shields, or if you want to talk about Brandon's big win, or whatever you're thinking, man.
Well, where did you go with the how were you with you purchased the Claressa card, I'm assuming?
I did not purchase it.
Okay.
I personally did not. Someone purchased it that I knew. It was on their phone, and I ended up watching it a little later. But I personally didn't. Okay. I had to work that night, pretty late night, and I wasn't thinking it was going to be. Sometimes I have rented a pay-per-view and came back like late night, 2 a.m, and watched it with some people. I didn't think that I needed to do that part, but I did sit there and watch it right after we were off work at the bar. So I was part of a purchase, I guess you could say. Because I did buy someone a drink, actually, for it. So.
I don't know, man. I think we should be able to support stuff, but then also kind of be fair. And I know, on my YouTube channel and talking about it afterwards, I'm not so sure it was all that great of a value for fight fans. But like I said, I threw it out there. I'm not just trying to bash it for the sake of bashing it. I understand where they are and what they were trying to do. But I just think, when you throw those types of when you put the product out there, you kind of have to over deliver sometimes. And I just think some of the fights that didn't materialize, I was a little disappointed in that. Raquel Miller was supposed to be on there at one. Yep. She was one of the first names that were thrown out there, and I was a little excited about that because I was thinking for once maybe this could be building towards an eventual showdown with Miller and Shields. And and to be honest, I don't even know if that's a good fight, to be honest. But I just want to see Shields against some Americans. Or I want to see her against somebody that I've seen before, and I think that's kind of one of the things that's plaguing her popularity, or improvement in that area is we're seeing these opponents for the first time usually when they fight her, and
exactly. We can go watch their tape from somebody they beat who we don't know who that person is that they beat either.
Exactly. So, and then the co-main event for the heavyweights. That was a pretty bad fight, man. I mean, Monica Harrison is older. She was, she got tired quickly. Perkins did try a lot more and assert herself a lot earlier and whatnot, but it still just wasn't all that great of a fight. I did appreciate Jamie Mitchell. I believe she's a bantamweight. I did appreciate her, her performance against Noemi Vasquez. But again, Vasquez was a little. I think her record was up and down. She might have been upside down. She might have been 12-14 or 12-15 or something. I mean, she tried to compete, but Mitchell was having her way with her fairly easily. And then Marlene Esparza against Shelly Barnett was the opener. And I am familiar with Esparza. Barnett didn't put up much of a fight. So, like I said, if anybody that wanted to tune in and support Clarissa Shields, you probably were pleased. But again, in wanting there to be something more, and to be, the overall narrative to be positive, I really wish a couple more things would have come together to make the fight, to make it a better presentation to fans. But in terms of the fight, I really wasn't all that blown away by Shields' performance, and I'm not just trying to take shots from her, just for the sake of critiquing her. I felt like, and maybe it wasn't even that great of a matchup because I did get to watch Marie-Eve Dicaire beforehand, and she did the same thing that I saw in the other fights. I mean, she just taps, runs, moves.
Feint.
Feint. And then once she saw that she couldn't really box with Claressa, and she got touched up a little bit, I mean, she just made the fight ugly. And I think so, and I can't blame Claressa after getting into the second half of the fight. It's almost like basketball, man. When you go and play 21, and maybe you're on varsity and you go into summer camps and whatnot, and you're serious about your game, and you get out to a park to play 21, and it's a couple of guys that
There's me standing
you might
there.
hurt. Yeah, you might hurt yourself,
but I'll follow the shit out of you.
Exactly. So you just play like, I'm just gonna work on my jumper today, man. It ain't even worked on that. I'm just out here just shaking off some rust, and I just work on my outside game. So I understood that getting later in the fight because Dicaire was kind of running in recklessly, just making contact, banging, forearm, whatever lands. But I just think, I would have liked to see a little bit more body work. I think, Claressa kind of took on this, trying to showboat a little bit and maybe like kind of being disrespectful not disrespectful, but like cocky in a way that I'm going to just time you and knock you out. And I don't, she hasn't demonstrated that she's that kind of puncher just yet. So, I would have liked to see a little bit more body work and a little more consistent offense. But, I mean, hey, what can you say when you win all 10 rounds convincingly, and you become two-time, undisputed champion? So I heard some thing. I heard a interview with Eddie Hearn, and, he was throwing out there about a two-fight deal with Savannah Marshall. They'd like to explore that. I'm hearing everything that Claressa is saying, but I don't know if 147 is really gonna be an option for her. Can she get down there? Who knows? And then I mean all the other women are just smaller. I mean, and
right.
Her against McCaskill. I mean, McCaskill was just coming up from 140. And then we know that Cecilia Brækhus, I mean, if she's able to get her revenge this weekend, it's best that she walk off. So I just think realistically, going back up is probably the next best move for Claressa, and somehow another, Savannah Marshall, her popularity improves. I think she fights on like April 10th or something, and they see what they can get going with that. But all in all, man, like I said, I was proud of her in the sense that she complained and said what she had to say, and then she went out there and her promoter and her business team took a shot at trying to find a way to get her some work. And like you said, they got to establish some baseline numbers. I saw the article about there being 25,000 sales or buys, and then there was also a press release that the numbers were encouraging. I'm not going to dig in all. I don't think it. I would be shocked if it was over 20, but hey, whatever.
Sure.
I did, and then I think it was encouraging that they announced, the Bella has an all-women series headed to UFC Fight Pass with Heather Hardy. Can't even think of who her opponent is now, but she'll be on the first one. I believe that's in like mid-April or something. I don't know if all
Friday,
women is going to be
April 23rd. Just to
April 23rd.
Broadway Boxing presents Ladies Nights. Like you said, UFC Pass, April 23rd. I saw that today.
Who do you remember who her opponent was? I was familiar with the opponent. I just can't think of her name at the moment.
You know, it doesn't say it on the tweet, so I didn't think it was official that she had an opponent, but I may be wrong on that one. I'll check.
Yeah, it's someone that I've seen before, but it's escaping me. But like I said, man, I all in all, I bought it. It was, I think, the price point was solid where there wasn't enough for me to come out and complain. I did mention earlier though, or on my live stream Sunday, and even last night, I had a writer join me on the show. Since we're experimenting so much with the social media guys and the YouTubers and the Instagram people and talking about followings and whatnot, I really think it would be. I really think it would be. What's up?
No, I'm saying there you go. I like where you're going with this. This would actually make a lot of sense for her.
Well,
go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
What I was getting to was, I think on some of these platforms that are getting involved, UFC Fight Pass, this Fight TV, why can't the Boxing Voice or Segback or any of these Fight Hype, why can't they incorporate these bigger channels that do so much work with boxing fans on a daily basis? Like, why wouldn't you try to find a way to incorporate them into the show? I think it would be worth, maybe another 2,500 to 5,000 buys if some of these popular platforms were saying, look, we're going to be on the show this week. It's a $35 show, a $30 show, blah, blah, blah. And, we're going to have some kind of segment. And maybe it's a way to bring more eyes to the sport. I mean, if we're sitting here, talking about how many followers Jake Paul and whoever else, his brother, how many and Garcia's followers, like, why not, spread the the spotlight around, and like I said, reward some of these guys for for putting boxing in front of people, Monday through Saturday and whatnot, even Sunday. So that's just an idea I was thinking earlier, like, because I'll be honest, man, the guys that they had on the broadcast that night, they didn't really bring it for me. I don't know what was going on with Canovio and his interviews.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
I could have listened to some music or something while I was watching that card, but that's neither here nor there. The Ring City, man. I shout out to I thought it was a really excellent fight that we were getting ready to see until the footing became an issue, halfway through the second or into that third round. I mean, it was good inside fighting and, just very solid punches being landed. It just seemed like we were in for a war, man. And then, we get to that third round and, according to what Adams was looking to do, the lateral movement, maybe getting inside, getting underneath some of Boachuk's shots, and the footing that he needed to do what he was trying to do, that being taken away from him. He spent like 4 or 5 rounds just kind of looking deflated,
for a dry spot
or something.
Yeah.
I mean, and you can see he was circling around to the ropes trying to find
we got
a dry spot
here. We just camp out right here. I'll post up. Yeah.
Yeah.
It started looking like the Flintstones when they start their car up to get going. It was like, dude, it's just a shuffle. And I swear this is the second time that they've had slip issues with that middle logo. I swear. I like the logo because it's kind of like, it looks like almost fabric, but it's like fists and stuff. But I swear this is the second time they've had problems with that middle logo. I don't know if it's the material or what, but I know they were saying the humidity made it even worse this time. And they were saying that's what it was, but that was getting pretty irritating for a good fight that was taking place.
Yeah, but it was, great moment though that Adams capitalized on. Like, I mean, he turned the switch on out of nowhere, and like you said, you broke down the sequence of punches. I mean, that set it all up. But to get him out of there, I think the referee did a good job, and there was really no way that they could let Boachuk continue. He was staggering into the referee as he was trying to, after he got back up to his feet. He didn't even get into, take some steps over here, walk over here. Do you want – it would have been irresponsible to let that continue. So, and like John was saying, Adams did well going through the, through the epics, when it went to epics, the contender. He showed that it was plenty level between him and Mosley Jr. Didn't they make it to the finals?
Yeah, I think so.
He showed it was levels between them, and now, they're talking about Mosley maybe getting into contention at middleweight. I don't know about that. But Adams down at 54, I think, is a great place for him. And I just think, man, this whole thing that he's on with, his positivity, positive attitude and uplifting the sport and wanting to be inspirational to others and all of that stuff. I don't know. It sounds like he's found some kind of freedom, in being who he wants to be with his ring, his ring walk attire and all that type of stuff. So if it works for him, more power to him. And, and like I said, it was great for him to come on and do 2 appearances on this Ring City show. It's a new platform, and he's a good name to be on there. And then put in a hell of a performance against Boachuk. So shout out to them. Tomorrow's nice card. I'm not going to go through all of those, but I do want to see what Brandon Lee brings to the table. Tia actually beat Sonny Fredrickson last time. I think that was December of 2019. It was a card in D.C., and I think Fredrickson kind of got a raw deal on the decision, but it was some weird stuff that happened in the fight. They stopped the fight in the 4th or 5th round to inspect the ring, and
right, yep, that's right.
It was a little weird. I don't know if Sonny ever got back into the flow of the fight, and I just thought I thought Sonny allowed Tia to look better than what he should have, and he ended up getting a decision. And they were, I think, all the judges were DC people or had some kind of connections to Philadelphia, whatnot, whatever, and whatever. But I think it's a pretty good fight. He's also been in there with the boss man Sims kid. I don't see anything special in Tia, but I mean he's a guy that I would imagine can go in there and get some rounds in and maybe threaten or make Lee do more than just throw bombs, maybe. I mean, the way that Lee knocked out that last cat was pretty impressive, and I think the dude was a little older and a little inactive and whatnot. But I want to see the Ortiz against Jeremy. I think it's Jeremy Hill fight. I'm pretty interested in that one. Like I said, it's four fights. I think most of the guys are undefeated, so I want to check that out. But just to to move ahead to Saturday, man, I honestly don't have a winner yet in my mind between Estrada and Chocolatito. I think the big concern for me and something what I'll be keying into very early is just I think Estrada's his legs could be the factor, and it could be a little difficult for Chocolatito. Like John was saying, he has slowed down considerably or enough, and what he had, the success that he had against Yafai, I don't see Estrada being that easy to be found. And if the Estrada that beat Sorungasai in the rematch, if that Estrada shows up, it could be a pretty difficult night for Chocolatito. But
right.
I think it's just gonna be an excellent fight. I mean, both guys I think are coming to knock each other out. Us seeing Quadras drop, seeing him drop Estrada back in November or whatever that was. I mean, it shows you that he's not, perfect. And maybe both guys in this one could get dropped or whatever. But I think if Estrada is sharp and his legs are right, I think it's gonna be tough for Chocolatito. But it would be a phenomenal story, if he could come back and after upsetting Yafai and then coming here and defeat Estrada. That would be phenomenal. I am very interested in McCaskill and Braikus. I don't know if Braikus is really willing to do what it takes to get a victory. I'm not all that blown away with McCaskill, like aesthetically and style-wise and whatnot. But, I mean, she is all effort, gritty, and, she'll stay in her chest. I just like her to take a half step back here and there and actually let some combinations go versus just kind of put her head down and just walk into somebody's chest and stay in there. But, it's working for her, and I think that's going to make another sports reference with football. I think Cecilia Braikus, she's like a quarterback that would like, a clean pocket. And I don't think McCaskill I don't think McCaskill's going to give that to her at all.
Want to go through my reads nice and slow and make sure.
Right. I want nobody touching my ankles or, no helmets down around my knees or anything.
No fingertip that hits my helmet or nothing. That's a penalty.
Exactly. So I think that's where she's going to run into some problems. But again, I don't really, I don't dislike Braikus, and I think with her losing that fight, it's kind of put her in an uncomfortable situation. And, as a long-time reigning champ, maybe she didn't face all the sport now is starting to pick up. She held the titles when we weren't all that concerned and there was no momentum in the women's game. And so, it would be a good story if she could come back and close out her career in a fitting way. I really didn't agree that she lost the first fight, but I don't think she necessarily did enough to get the victory. And with her being a long-time reigning champ, I was just kind of shocked that she didn't at least get a draw. But I think it's some good animosity there. That I can't remember my man's name, the other world titleist. What's his name? Hayaguchi or Kiraguchi?
I think so. Yeah.
I'm just looking forward to that. I respect the Japanese fighters and the energy that they bring. Usually, very disciplined guys, and I still got to go back and watch that Ioka fight. So anyway, I'm excited about that one. And then also I want to check out, I think it's two good step-up fights. I think Raymond Ford, the southpaw featherweight from Camden, New Jersey, I think he's a very talented fighter. They got him in tough against a guy that's like 11-0 or something, with a decent amount of knockouts. And then Ammo Williams is taking on Dennis Doglin. I don't know if you saw that Doglin fight against Mike Guy a while ago, but it was horrible. And if that's how he's going to show up in this moment, I would imagine that Ammo is successful, in a fight that they're trying to, step him up and put him in with a stern test. The guy's he's in camp with a lot of different guys. He's on Instagram doing drills and working out all the time and talking and everything. But he's got to show me something after that Mike Guy performance, because Mike Guy didn't do a whole lot that fight. And then the Mike Guy that showed up to fight John Ryder a couple months back, he didn't do nothing against Ryder. So I just, I want to see what Ammo brings. And then the Showtime card, I just think it's a good card. Gachet and Jamonte Clark on there, the super welterweights. Neither one of those guys can afford a loss. Maybe that makes Gachet get started a lot earlier. And, both Ohio guys, I'm sure Gachet doesn't want to, lose a intrastate, battle to a guy.
Clark's
him being an
usually in
Olympian
good fights, too. Clark's usually in good fights,
Right.
I mean, I remember
so
when
I think that's gonna...
boy got knocked out of the ring here in Minneapolis, and he went back in and kept fighting. I was like, whoa, haven't seen that. All I saw is legs. I was like, he's out of the ring. And, no problem. Got back up. No problem.
Right. So, I meant to reach out to him this week, but he's not really a big talker, so I didn't want to get involved in it. I just thought it was good to see him get a card. A lot of people thought he beat Sebastian Fundora. And when they met, that was a good fight for him. So, like I said, that should be exciting. And then, as John was saying earlier, Isaac Cruz is all action and should be a good fight. I'm not all that blown away with with Ellis, but
right, yeah,
I'll take it. I'll watch it. I think it's a good fight, and like I said, I think it's a pretty good card for Showtime. So I think, like I said, man, I'm excited about this week, and like again, it's going to be a lot of skill on display, a lot of grit, a lot of heart with Chocolatito and Juan Francisco Estrada, and sets us up the next week for Ortiz and Hooker and whatnot. So how can we be too upset about anything? I know we still didn't.
Especially in a basketball month, dude.
Exactly.
It's a basketball month.
Exactly.
People don't realize that.
Exactly. So, Eddie, I heard Eddie talking about this. This was probably the best. He feels that this is the best card that he's presented on, on U.S. soil and whatnot. I don't know if I agree with him or not. No need to argue, but I just tell you, man, I'm really starting to respect Hearn in terms of his enthusiasm towards his product and what he's trying to do and what he's trying to present. He takes his L's here and there, and whatnot, and he can't get certain fights done. We're not getting the matchup that we want with some of us might want for Andre still. Nothing really happening for Triple G that's pleasing folks and whatnot. But the guy just, at least somebody is saying that he wants to give fans a good value and to put on events that can compete with the other sports that we have to choose from here in the States. Like I said, he doesn't always have the horses, and the right guys to pull that off, but at least he talks it up. He tries to talk it up. He was way. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
I was just saying he was way more effusive in his praise and love for the J Balvin thing for Canelo. I went and got me something to drink or something at the time, but whatever.
Seriously, yeah. The thing is, like, promoters, you're gonna rip them because they're gonna say promoter things, and every promoter would do it and all that shit. Beyond all that stuff, the guy does talk a great game, and he is very energetic, and he's willing to do a lot of interviews, and he's doing his own platform, and he's, he definitely is a guy that, like I said, love him or hate him, he's out there grinding, and that's something you cannot deny. It's just undeniable.
Right. Well, even with the Akin Barak show on, on Daily, on Sirius XM, that's the zone backed. And what's your thoughts, man? Do you think that's going to be something moving forward that promoters, they don't have any control over it, but everybody, PBC guys are over there, top ranked guys are over there, and Akin Barak, they kind of stir things up and are constantly looking to get these younger guys into these different statements. They're throwing out certain thoughts and some to them. And then, You know what I'm saying? Is because we see now. I put some audio on a live stream of mine the other day where they had Teofimo Lopez on there, and here it is, Top Rank. Your fighter just goes on this platform and just says all this stuff that he's getting ready to do. 1 or 2 fights I'll be moving on from from Top Rank, and Todd the Buff is this and that, and it's like, I don't know, man. That's just, it seems like that could be discouraged in the future. Like, hey, at one point in time that looked like good exposure, and they were really just over there talking boxing. But now they come back to me, and I got all these disgruntled, employees and whatnot. Like, just talk to Kriegel and our guys doing fight week.
Yeah, our fighters. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think there would be an outlet for that anyway, and there was multiple outlets, but it is a different feel, like you said, on the serious, and they do like to stir up the pot. I do think at times you do see, I like how they have a variety of guys, that's for sure. Now, I think they do in some terms, and, DAZN's part of it, so I do think that when they say why fights aren't getting made, I do think that they lend itself to DAZN more at times, but that's normal. That's a normal thing. I do like how that they, like you said, they have all sorts of guests on there, so I think that's pretty dope. I like them. At times, I'm stuck between, are you a casual? No, you're not. Okay, I'm just making sure. Like, there are some times where I'm like, what, dude? Nah, you're into this, but I don't know if you're into you're into broadcasting and stuff like that, and you're very good at your job. But there are some times where I'm like, nah, dude, that's not a good way to break that down at all. That doesn't make any sense. But I do like the platform, and I wonder, you never know. I don't know. I just think that there's so many platforms, especially IG, that they can just do. So I don't think that a promoter is going to come out and be like, hey, don't do that, because I think that they could just go live and it's a wrap, and they don't even need a platform. And that's kind of that is a platform, but that's kind of what's going on now, for better or for worse. A lot of media fans said they want to keep, these fighters need to keep themselves relevant. Well, they are drawing attention on IG, so I mean, it is keeping them relevant. It just gets old, like we talked about last week too. But I don't think there'll be something like, in the contract or something like that nowadays. I don't think they can do that. But, yeah, it is kind of interesting, though. It is pretty funny, especially like the last 6 months or so. You've seen a lot of that where you're like, wow, okay, cool,
Yeah, like you said, the one thing that I don't like that they do, it's 2 or 3 fighters, definitely Canelo being one, but any of the non-fighter guests that they have on there, any of them that like try to question anything about Canelo, especially Ak, he goes on the offense very quickly. Like, how can you question this man's? How can you question this man's resume? How could you question this? And it's like, bro, like, the PED thing did happen, man. Like, all of us don't have to ignore that the way that you do, because the dude has bought you a couple of steaks and let you in the back into his room and shit. Like, allow other people to have their and people have went on there and said that Charlo can't get that fight or whatever. Or we're tired of seeing him fighting the same type of opponent. And they just he can do what he wants to do, and it's just like, man, let me come back after you get on to the next segment, because this stuff right here, you should let other people have their opinions. Like I said, we've all been paying and spending our Fridays and Saturdays and Wednesday nights and Thursday nights, up in the morning. We've all been paying our dues watching this stuff. Don't bring me on here and not allow me to talk freely about my opinions. I didn't say Canelo was trash. I just said the man had an issue with a test before.
Right. And some close decisions too. I mean, I think you put that perfectly. Yeah, I agree. There's some times where I'm like, okay, here's the DAZN part. but then they act like they're not the DAZN part. That's what bugs me.
Ooh.
That's the only thing that
Right.
bugs me. Is like, dude, don't say that and then do that. just keep it, don't even mention it then. Like that's the only problem. And I don't know, if there's a sponsorship involved, I just don't know if we can get that out of the system of that. You can see with Coppinger, the guy does a lot of great work, and I'd never take that away from him, but there's so many things that he says where you're like, come on, dude, you weren't saying that before, now but that's him. That's why they like him. That he sparks it up on Twitter, and he does do great work breaking stories, no doubt.
Yeah, like I said, I don't have any problem with those guys. I listen to the show regularly, and like you said, they get pretty much everybody from all rosters, all banners. They get them on there, and in comparison, the Monday and Friday night guys, the older school cats, Gordon and Cooney. Gordon, in my opinion, really embarrassed himself the Monday after Broner's fight. He went all out talking about who the 140 guys that he wanted to see Broner fight so that they could basically end his career. And I'm like, dude, like, at what point didn't you think that you were just throwing all your credibility out the window over a guy that you just don't like? Yeah, he disrespected you at the press conference and embarrassed you, but going down to his level on your own platform, I really don't see the win in that. Just don't approach the guy. Just don't approach the guy anymore. I don't say nothing to Broner anymore when I see him at play. I don't try to ask that dude any questions or anything, and he didn't even say nothing that bad to me, but I just wasn't, I'm not in it for that type of, that's not the kind of content that I'm seeking to put on my platform. So I just say what's up and keep it moving.
Yeah, or like the whole, and you see this with some of the media, but especially the fan base, but they get it a little from the media, and I thought you get a good example there. But some of this, I want him to end his career shit, is like, dude, you know what you're saying that, though, right? Like, this isn't just a different sport. This isn't, the Celtics got old and the Pistons took over, or, this is fighting, dude. Like, I don't like to go too far with that type of shit, because it's like, yeah, until somebody gets fucked up, then you're going to be, on the other side going, I can't believe this fight even, that gets to me after a while. Like, you want people that get their career ended. Well, that's a little different story in boxing when people get their career ended, especially if it's the way they want, that they say they want it,
Yeah, like I said, man, I thought it was an embarrassing moment for Gordon. I'll be honest, man. I haven't been a real big fan of the way that they've gone about things on that show. So honestly, when the Zone noon show came on, daily show came on, I kind of quit even messing with those guys. I would go back after the fact, I would go back and see who the guests were, and then I might just play that specific segment, on the on-demand show. But to just sit and listen to them on Monday and Friday night, man, I mean, the times that they've had Jack Reese on there after some of Reese's questionable moments, and they just praise, Reese like he's infallible, and some of the other favorites that they have on there, it's just like, geez, damn. So, but hey, they work that hard to get that platform, and they do what they do with it. But but I don't know, man. Like I said, I think this is gonna be it's a good stretch right here. Like you said, I'm glad that you mentioned that. ESPN is kind of taking a break for the basketball month. Fox is still wherever it is with boxing, and then Showtime. Like I said, this is pretty good action this week. Their numbers, man, I mean, they've just been pretty brutal, man. And I hate to see it, but I hope they don't get out, lead the game or anything, man. But it just seems like people just aren't tuning in, man. No matter what they do.
Yeah, I mean, if you look around sports though and shows numbers, look at the NBA All-Star game.
That is true.
Did you see the All-Star game? That's the lowest it's ever been. So
yeah,
I don't know. The thing about some of the ESPN stuff, if you look at the ratings in the summer, it wasn't good for ESPN. But what they've done well in the fall and now of late is they've had a great lead-in, which always bumps it up. If Showtime had a legit movie lead-in or something, it would help it. But it's just a different setup. They are for subs, though, and they're doing good there. But it doesn't really surprise me, to be honest with you. I mean, a lot of, fight cards would only do 300,000-400,000 anyway a few years back. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, they started out pretty damn good. I like the card next. Their doubleheader next week, or not next week, but next month is really good. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see where they go. I mean, this is the third year, so we'll see. Where that goes from there.
Yeah, it's like I said, I will say that environment that they have could use a little more life in it. Like, even ESPN, they've started, and I know that's in Vegas. They, different states have different rules and whatnot. But it's all dark in there. I mean, now we're starting to see maybe 25, 35 people in the background, over on ESPN. Some different fighters are showing up to watch the fights and whatnot. And it's just like on Showtime, it's all dark in there. It's like just essential personnel only. And it's just like, damn, man, I mean, lighten this up a little bit or just got to give us fans.
I mean, I hear that. Else. I don't think that has much to do with ratings, but I hear what you're saying.
No, definitely. I'm just saying for those of us that are tuning in, give us a little bit more light stimulation or something. Or live. It's like these guys are just coming in there strictly to do battle, and we're just giving you this battle, and that's it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Fair thing, no doubt. And we are going to, like you said, restriction-wise, we are going to see some crowds and whatnot. Anything else that you want to talk about?
That was pretty much it, man. Like I said, we'll see. We've had some promising numbers with the, with the COVID situation. We had, Texas just opened up 100%. I think a handful of other states did, or quite a few other states did. So it's a bit promising that, if things continue to go in the right direction, I think it'll give the promoters the cue to get back, to putting together some of the other fights that we've been waiting on, or,
right.
They can start, getting that planning together and, gradually get back to business and whatnot. So I'm just a little excited about that. And then, just the year is flying by. We're already in, March and whatnot. So all in all, man, like I said, I continue to applaud the sport for doing what it's done. And, if you would have told me last year.
Fights, there are several fights that aren't being made because of that, though, to add to your point.
Right.
Clearly, some of them need a gate.
Yeah, I think as soon as that, like I said, they get the right cue, I do think there'll be motivation to roll some of that stuff out and get going. It's just, without getting anything positive in that area, it's kind of hard to commit to something. Like I said, I think boxing has done all that it really could do to kind of get to this point, and keep a couple of good fights that we do have, and whatever they've been able to put together in Texas and Florida. And it's just like, hey, dude, like, we got to get back to work.
All right, man. So, you have yourself a good night. Thanks for calling in, buddy.
You too, man. Take care. Next time.
All right. Yep. Peace. All righty. So, and just actually, is he still on? Oh, like here's an example. When I'm talking about Coppinger, I mean, there's other fights that he said that are just stay busy. I'm not traveling to that shit. He's done it numerous times. I think I remember Gervonta. I think was it Spencer Compton? I don't know, but there's just certain things that you can see now that they got a big ass sponsorship, and so they're going with it. Here's an example. Someone sent me this tweet not long ago. He said the night of Canelo's Stay Busy fight, this 80s inspired Miami theme hype video was wild. I'm not sure if my favorite part was the music or Alvarez smirking before speeding off in an exotic car with sunglasses on. So he's that pumped up about this shit, but then he says, I would never travel for a stay busy fight for other people. He said that numerous times. And I remember the last one that people made fun of him for was Gervonta, and how he was saying that was going to be a comp thing. But to sit there and break down, I don't know what it was. It the music my favorite part, or Alvarez smirking, man, it was sunglasses. It just kind of like, dog, you'd never do this before, or things like, they needed to find a way to put Wilder and Fury on normal TV, as if that was possible, with those guarantees, even if they were only 5 or 10 million guarantees. You can't do that, But then he'll go after folks for losing money, but he doesn't go after DAZN barely for losing money, So that's the thing about him, bugged me. But let's get into some fight news, and I am gonna do the boxing Twitter segment. It's coming, guys. I actually got a couple of messages. It's gonna be the same thing as last week. It's like, no, dude, we got some time. We got some time. Oh yeah, just breaking down the fight. Obviously, this is going to be a fun fight with Gonzalez and Estrada. They started at 108. Now, after all these years, they get it done. Estrada finally got this fight. He had been, chasing him up, and I'm not saying Gonzalez was ducking him, but he was ducking him. No, I'm just kidding. He wanted this fight. He kept moving up, and I'm just glad it's here. And it was cool because both of them were fighting solid guys, so it didn't feel like this rematch needed to happen super bad. Gonzalez, obviously, we all know he can work the body with both hands. He loves to throw those overhand rights. He's got that short left hook. A lot of times he's just pressure activity, huge work rate, his quick combination punching. He's going to have to keep Estrada on the ropes. There's just no way around it. That was what was key in the first one, like I mentioned before. And Estrada, speaking of a left hook, dude's got a killer left hook, whether it's a lead, whether it's a counter left hook. When he throws that left hook to the body and then the overhand right, it really looks like Marquez. Maybe because Marquez is my favorite fighter in this last generation. I don't know, but that's what I'm seeing. And he's a little quicker, I'd say. But that left hand to the body, man, it is nasty. I do think he's got to keep, especially early on, to that one or two shots. Larry Holmes and somebody else was saying it. I just watched it today again. Back in 2012, I was like, that was Larry Holmes. The circle, the two shots and move. He has to use some of that hand speed that he has, and he doesn't have the same legs as he did back in 2012, but he definitely has to, to stick and move and not dig in too much to brawls and exchanges. And it's not that he can't, get the better of him, because I think he will take that half step back or that step to the side and land a left hook counter, much like John was saying too. But I have him by decision. I think it'll be like a 7-5-ish, 8-4-ish, 7-5-ish, something like that. I just think he'll do a little bit more damage. And yeah, if it's a knockout, I think it would be a TKO knockout. I think I'm going decision Estrada though. Benavidez shouldn't have much problems. Like most people have said here. I am looking forward to that Javante Clark, Terrell Gaucher. I mean, it's a closely, actually, what is it? It's minus 130 and plus 100. Plus 100. Actually, that's the only favorite for Terrell. Clark actually is a plus 110 and a plus 100. So that's a 50-50 fight. It may not be this high-profile fight, but these mid-level crossroads type stuff, I love them. You guys know, if you've listened to the show, I'm all about that. But that Roman Gonzalez plus 145, plus 130, I think 145 is the highest. Otherwise, Estrada is a minus 160, minus 179 is the highest I'm seeing. Oh, there's a 189. So I would definitely, not definitely, but I go with this. I'm going with Estrada. I'm going to put a little something on it. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty good weekend of fights. Like I said, Brandon Lee, showcasing tomorrow. I think it's just another kind of step forward in his career type thing. I'm not looking like that's a great fight or anything like that, but it definitely keeps him busy. Steven Ortiz and Jeremy Hill is on that card. Vic Padilla is on that card against, what is it, Velasquez or something like that. But anyway, and by the way, we were talking about Heather Hardy. She's taking on Jessica Kamara. That's who we were trying to think of. So Devin Haney is taking on not Javier Fortuna, which we kind of thought that was going to be the case. There's been a lot of back and forth. Ooh, man. On the Boxing Voice, actually, between their two sides of representation. And, it is what it is, right? I mean, it's not like Javier Fortuna is like a way, way better fight by any stretch of the imagination. But it is a good fight for him, Jorge Linares. You never quite know the first couple of rounds with him. He does usually need to get there first, and then he can do his thing. So I like the fight. It is another step in the right direction. I'd say Javier Fortuna is definitely fresher. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. But Coppinger, speaking of, he's actually saying that Devin Haney's going to make $3 million in this fight. And that's just another, like, I just look back at even Thurman and Garcia, and they both were making $1 million at least, as far as what they showed. And I remember the media, a lot of it, just railing. And I'm not just talking about Steve Kim, not the whole media, of course, but they used to just trounce on some of these fights. Like, they're both getting $1 million, blah, 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 blah. But, I mean, that's the thing, the overpayment of what DAZN does compared to what PBC did. It's not even really close, actually, if you think about it. Some of the fights that they paid $5 and $10 and more for. That's the part that just gets like, all right, dude, great. But by the way, I do like the fight, though. I'm not ripping it. I think it's a good fight. I just don't know. I would have preferred Fortuna. It does sound like maybe he'll fight Ryan Garcia. Or I shouldn't say that. Maybe he'll have a chance to fight Garcia because he's in that mix there. But Jorge Linares is very skilled. We know his chin and his eyes. They usually, it's not great. He usually is cut and knocked out, or knocked out and cut. I mean, the guy has some issues there. Obviously, putting Lomachenko on his butt was pretty impressive in some other, fights he had in rounds he had against Lomachenko too. So you'd assume it'd be a game fighter in there. We don't know exactly where he's at though, but we'll see. We'll see. He has this thing about, the way his career's gone, he'll lose something really early. He'll lose a fight early, first, second round, and then boom, have a nice little run in his career. So maybe that'll be the case here. He'll give Devin Haney a good fight. And by the way, this has nothing to do with Haney making $3 million. Make your money, dude. I'm not saying that. I just think it's funny. Guys like Coppinger and many others would usually just destroy that had it been, of course, PBC. But that's May 15th on DAZN. So all things considered, I mean, would I like Gary Russell or something else? Yeah, I mean, obviously we'd like Teofimo and Garcia, but that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. So I'm okay with this fight. Like I said, the only reason why I favor Fortuna, I think he's got a little more power and he's fresher. And he was one of the mandatory situation that was going on over there. But whatever, it is what it is. I did hear a fair amount of pushback. Somebody heard me say this on the intro, I think, because someone messaged me. I don't know who it is. But a lot of people talking, maybe not a lot, but I saw this out there that they're really getting down on Top Rank for not being on ABC, part of that ESPN deal. And really it's because, we saw it ABC, Frazier, Ali, but also the UFC's already gotten 2 ABC, cards on there. And Top Rank, although that was in the press release in the first year or so, Bob would say, and this may fall on ABC a little bit. He didn't really say that much, though. I think Crawford Horn and some other fight he was talking about that. But, there's a lot of things to rip Bob Arum about, and I do here on the show. But for this one, it's like you can't, like they talked about it. So, yeah, we got a pay-per-view before we got an ABC. So that's a fair criticism. But, the UFC deal is just so much bigger in so many ways. And it is what it is. And that goes for the DAZN per year and the PBC per year, too. So, I mean, it just is what it is. It helps out their ESPN Plus so much. And it is what it is, dude. Like, they're tied to this thing. It's a big deal. And that's why it's been able to get on ABC, dude. So I wouldn't go too crazy on Top Rank not getting fights on ABC. And they don't really have the names for it as well. But that wasn't really a big part of the deal, at all. So I just saw several people on Twitter saying that. And I think it's because, like I said, the UFC and whatnot. But they also, have shown, I think, twice now in, I think, the afternoons. They've put Holly and Frazier on there. So I understand that. Gary Russell Jr. has a fight with Ray Vargas. They have agreed to terms. I think that's a good fight. Vargas, I don't know stylistically what the hell it's going to, because Vargas tends to, be able to really contain folks. But it's a good fight. It's a good fight. Obviously Russell did talk about in an interview not long ago, can't remember who, but he said, I think it was the Boxing Voice again. He said, shouts out to Ness. He said, like, I'm going to get this fight, be able to maybe keep my belt, and then try to go to 130. And then if not, then I'll drop my belt if that's the case. But I'm just gonna basically tune up, this is more than a tune up, of course. But I'm not trying to disrespect Ray Vargas. But it's a good fight. Like I said, King Tug and Ray Vargas now, and Jojo Diaz. So he's fought in some good fights. It's just, it's once a year, and it's not that top level fight. So we'll see what goes there. We are going to get to some fight news and boxing Twitter in just a second. Charlo versus Golovkin. Now, Eddie and Golovkin is a DAZN fighter, so let's bring that in there. But Eddie said that there was no deal, or not Eddie. Coppinger came out and said that there was no deal offered. There's no negotiations. GGG did not turn down Charlo this time around. Charlo won on IG, funny enough, with Devin Haney. We were just talking about him not too long ago. The beginning of it is Charlo saying it looks like Golovkin turned down the deal. I think it was a 2-fight deal, one on PBC, one on DAZN. I don't know if that's true. Charlo said it. Coppinger said no. Which one is it? Is Charlo just saying it? I don't know. I do know that, there was a time in the WBC a few years back called for that fight, and Golovkin did turn it down, but it made sense because he's like, well, why would I have to fight Charlo to get a second Canelo fight? That's a big fight. But also legitimately, and this is money in the Canelo fight too. Obviously, that's what Golovkin's on DAZN for. But he was offered a deal Not for as much money, though. Let's point that out. But he was offered a deal to join the PBC, and one of those fights would have been against Charlo on pay-per-view. So, the only quality fight he's had is Derevyanchenko, and he's PBC. It's kind of funny how that works out. If he doesn't fight Canelo, though, it'll be like, wow, dude. I mean, hey, make your whatever it is. And they say it's $15 million a fight. The total of it, 7 or 10 is hard, like cash, and then the rest is equity. I don't really know how that works. I mean, I know how equity works, but I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know exactly. We've never gotten a full explanation of exactly how much money that is, and how much. When you say $7 million here's $7 million in equity. Well, so what's that percentage-wise of the whole worth of the? You know what I mean? It's a little funky, is my point. But once again, it's huge money and a chance to fight Canelo, and DAZN made it sound like they were going to be able to make that work. So, it is what it is. But, it has been at least once since he said no to the fight, and he did say no to the PBC, but that was a money thing. He's gotten some easy fights for big money that he wouldn't have gotten there. And obviously, Canelo, it's such a big fish there. Now, it turns out he could maybe have fought in Derevyanchenko and Charlo and then fight Canelo on pay-per-view maybe. Who knows? But anyway, I don't think that would have turned out. But I really don't know. Maybe we'll hear once Charlo gets his fights announced. Maybe we'll hear a little bit more about it. Not totally sure. All righty. Here's actually some funky stuff. Usyk's representation talked about the possibility, like, has there been discussions for a Joyce fight against Usyk and his team? They didn't make it sound like it was. They basically said the split should be 93% to 7 because Usyk's is, it's just this huge star, I guess. 93% of the purse, but at least 80 to 20 because that's what it would be for the WBO. But nobody has the WBO belt between those two. So I don't think that would be 80-20. Wouldn't that be more like 50-50? That's usually how like a vacant interim shit works, doesn't it? Or maybe he has the interim and I just forgot. It's like if you're trying to get 93% to 7% is like, so you're saying you don't want to, you don't want that fight. By the way, through 2021, little detail I forgot to mention with Golovkin, he is signed through this year. So we'll see where he goes, if anywhere. I really don't totally know. I did hear Canelo talk about how at some point late in 2021, maybe early 2022, would be willing to fight Charlo at that time. We'll see, how that goes. Joe Smith Jr. and Maxim Vlasov, the reschedule is April 10th. So that's good. That's really good. The COVID kind of got in the way of that. Dude, there was this fighter that was 40 pounds over. I mean, it was Caleb Baker left without a fight as the headline. Opponent missed weight by 40 pounds, just barely missed it. A lot of different stuff here to break down. A couple more news items. Actually, I think Wood said this, that there's a possibility that Clarissa Shields and Savannah Marshall could fight next, one in the UK, one in the US. I think that's a good idea. That would be really cool. Otherwise, not a ton of other news. Fury has said a bunch of stuff now. Well, he always saying something, but he's talking about this is our quotes from him here in this interview. This is on ESPN.com. It was just a big mess up on the Wilder trilogy. I should have boxed because I've been so inactive. I've been out for a year, and he admitted I just should have taken that January, February dates for the third fight with Wilder, which is pretty funny now that you see that kind of added up. You know what I'm saying? I think that's a little funky. So here's Prograis. This is actually Coppinger talking about a potential of Gervonta Davis and Mario Barrios, which at 140 I do like the fight. I'd rather see him fight at 130 or 135, but it is a good fight at that weight class just because we don't know where the power would be. But Prograis says, when I was trying to fight Barrios, they said he was moving up to 147. Now he's fighting a 130-pounder. Dude's been really scared of me. I don't know. Some of this stuff is like, I don't know. I think Prograis a tad bit overrated. Like I wouldn't have him. I think somebody tweeted the other day, like it's basically there's only two guys otherwise that could beat him. Otherwise, I got him beating everybody. I don't got that. I'll say that. Saunders, Billy Joe Saunders, biggest fight in his career. Here's the headlines. Keith Eidick, boxing scene. Saunders hasn't started camp properly yet. Canelo fight. For the Canelo fight. Still heavy, has the flu, is what it says. I think obviously everyone knows I've got to be at my best. This is what he said for Ak and Barack. But I'm pushing for time now. 10 days off training. I've got the flu, not in shape. I'm still heavy. I'm still, not started a proper camp. No, I don't have enough time, but I'm just going to go out there and pick up a check and go home. That's basically what he was joking about. Let's hope anyway. There's one thing with me. If I get beat, or if I win a fight, I'll never make excuses, even if there was an excuse. From my end, no excuses. If I'm not good enough to beat Alvarez on the 8th, I'll never be good enough. It's like heavy. How heavy are you, dude? You just had a fight, and you've had a lot of time off. This is Prograis. Y'all really think Tank could fuck me up? I mean, I know he's popular and he's a pretty good fighter, but I would hurt that little boy. Floyd would never let him close to me. There's a restraining order, basically, on him. That's what he was saying. Oh, here it is, actually, funny enough. There are only two fighters I would favor against Prograis, Taylor and Crawford. Regis would beat the shit out of Tank. Regis, basically, he favored anyone at 140 and 147 for Prograis, besides Crawford and Taylor. That's come on, dude. Come on, man. Calm down a little bit on that one. I mean, who was he beating to just say that? And he didn't keep to the game plan. That's why he may have lost his last fight. I don't know, man. That's just a little overdone. And here's Edgar Berlanga. I'm ready to sell out Madison Square Garden for Puerto Rico Day Parade weekend. Just put me as the main event, and you'll see, June 12th. So he's looking for, something big. No one at 160 or top 3 at 168 has a shot at beating Demetrius Andrade unless he beats himself by aging or not training. No one at 160, huh? They don't even have a shot. The top 3 or the top 3 at 168 has a. So Canelo, Charlo, Benavidez, none of these guys even have a shot. When you say it like that, it's really like that's just a walk in the park type shit. You know what I mean? Somebody send me a link to the Clarissa fight. That's what Shakur Stevens said. It's like, dog, it's $30, man. I think that you can find $30, dude. This is Coppinger actually caught up with Adam Konoski. He said that the rematch with Helenius is coming early summer to accommodate fans in NYC. That's actually a really fun fight. I liked it the first time. Some people dogged it. Some people said, well, how the hell is the opponent, Helenius, even in this thing? And then he knocks him out, of course, on cue. So I like that fight, and obviously it's a good way to go back. This is Jake Donovan. The only thing Canelo has to get away from is the Matchroom curse. Everyone at Matchroom gets upset. Okay, that's not nice, but he does have a point minorly. Let me get this straight. Y'all gleefully watch Crawford, Loma, and GGG fight nobodies their entire career and call them the best. The moment Canelo fights a guy that's not the best available, it's a problem, and that is true. We saw a lot of that. Here it is. It's all a circus anymore. Floyd wasting his talent. The fact that he can still box at a high level with this sideshow fights, it's a novelty. Hopefully he don't get caught by a lucky haymaker. So he's saying Floyd is wasting his talent. Would he say that to Muhammad Ali? Eddie Hearn has revealed, this was on SiriusXM, that he said, after Canelo beats Billy Joe Saunders in Plant to achieve undisputed, Canelo told him he'd like to go international. The plan could be to box him in Middle East, China, or the UK. He wants to fight for 7 more years. And I could see, other countries putting up some money on top of the money that DAZN has, and that would be pretty big. So we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. If it cuts off, you know why. This is Virgil Ortiz Sr. Anyone who calls another fighter a bum or tomato can is pretty much a loser who lives on the couch or some moron not good enough to be in the sport, let alone be on a high level. Don't be that guy. Amen. Amen. I mean, come on, dude. What else we got? This is funny. This is Deuce Rollins. Is there anything more on brand for Chris Eubank Jr.'s career than going from being positioned for a shot at Jermall Charlo, which could have been next, to signing for Sutherland, and now he's positioned to fight Kell Brook? That is funny. That is funny. If Lopez agrees to this, he is single-handedly ruining the integrity of the future of boxing. Are you kidding me? So him winning a purse bid, going to fight on Trilla, where there'll be a celebrity co-feature, he's single-handedly ruining the integrity of the future of boxing. I got news for you, buddy. The integrity is long, long, long gone. If sanctioned bodies had legitimate rankings, these purse bids would be way more important frequently. Yes, I can agree with that, no doubt about it. A lot of pundits are exposing themselves on why they take their marching order, or who they take their marching orders from. Suddenly, they aren't worried about Triller making a profit, charging the loyal boxing fans for a pay-per-view, driving broadcasters away from the sport. And that is true. You really saw that, no doubt. All right, we're about to get cut off any second now. Enjoy the fights this weekend. We'll be back pretty much the same time. All right, peace.
Once you become the world champion, I believe that you feel you have the upper hand. So now, as you fight,